Um, Overall, what I want to do is talk about mental health, which is just like such a broad topic, like mental health and work-life balance are things that we're told to do and told to take care of. But it's like, what does that mean? And like, what does it look like? Because
Mm,
there's really no rules to all of this. So it's about normalizing the challenges that people are going to be facing and to empower people through it, right? Like, I'm not here to, be a doomer, but I also want to prepare people for the challenges that they're going to be facing in the industry. There's many challenges. There's lots of good things, but lots of things to watch out for. And it's through like recognizing those things you can kind of gain things like, better mental health or figuring out what work-life balance means for you.
cool. Cool. So, and you have kind of a 3 point thing about it. You say there are three components to understanding what the current mental health situation and keeping track of that stuff. What are those 3 points?
Yeah, so the way I kind of think about it, because it's a multifaceted thing. I mean, it's mental health, it's individual. So I think about like, who you are as a person and recognizing your own sort of, challenges or things you need to work on. So part of it's understanding yourself. Part of it is understanding the pressure that you're going to get in the job. So the challenges that you're going to face. And then the third part, and this is the part, I really like to touch on, is the animation culture itself and the, sometimes negative messages we can get from it and how that can subconsciously influence us to put our mental health to the side. The culture of your environment is such a huge proponent of if you can't even take care of your mental health. So
Mhm.
I think those things kind of in themselves, you can kind of start to unravel how to navigate the challenges.
So awesome. So I want to also just say right out front to everybody that's in the chat and everybody here. I think we're going to stay away from particular experiences on particular productions because we want to keep this like a very positive environment and we want to make sure that we want to make sure because this is also being recorded that we're not like shit talking any of our any of our old productions and whatnot. We want to keep this very, very positive. So if we keep the chat and the chat relatively positive, but it can be experiences that people have had too, just away from like specific names or specific companies or whatever. So I want to ask you like a little bit about you said the first one is the people. The first component is, us. What kind of experiences have you had that have made you very passionate about this particular about mental health?
Yeah, so I think it's I like I a part of my passion or like the reason why I like to talk about it is because I do love my job and I love animation and I want to continue to do it, right? Like I very much see it as a component of like the longevity of like of this. So um but because I had the passion for let's say the job first before the mental health, um it was only I mean, I can only speak of my experience and I'm always open to sharing because I got myself into a very, very bad place where I almost quit and I only a few people knew how bad I was really doing. And I didn't realize until after just how much I was putting my own needs to the side and I was just yeah, the job can take over,
Mhm.
even the people who are aware of it. I was in a situation where um and full out, and this is why I like to talk about like myself,
Mm.
because I fully see how in my situation I got in my own way because I had very a lot of caring and well-meaning people telling me to work less, to
Mm.
stop doing overtime, to stop putting all the pressure on my shoulders to make things work. People that were around me were seeing me be affected
Mhm.
and giving me the heads up, and I ignored it.
Mm.
And I think that's something where, you know, yes, there's external pressures, and we'll talk about, some of that stuff for sure. But for me, a lot of it was, yes, the external pressures, but a lot of it was me um telling myself a lot of things like, no, this is on your shoulders, you got to do this, or this is your chance to like, do something great. And it's on a show that I love too. Like I said, I love my job. The people who I worked with were great. I wanted to do right by them and like hold the fort.
Mhm.
And it's sort of like what the result of that was, although I'm sure well-meaning in my head, if it results in me crashing and not being able to do my job and reconsidering my career and having to go to a therapist, and I'm now on anxiety medication, which I mean, it's been great.
Mhm.
Like I've been
Yeah,
like,
let's cut the stigma right there if there is a
yeah, no,
stigma,
yeah,
like, yeah.
absolutely. Like full
Yeah.
out, and animation is full of neurodivergent people, like
Yeah.
absolutely, right? Like we all function in different ways, and
Mhm.
this is an industry that like attracts a lot of different people. But yeah, for me it was something that you know, I I got into a really bad place, and I've that was I think it's been about like 7 years now, 6 or 7 years.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, was that earlier in your career, like, very early in your career, and did you find yourself, like, more susceptible to it, or is this
Mm.
even just recent?
So I would say it's more recent. Like
Okay.
in my career, I was especially earlier on, I was very good at never doing overtime and like getting my 9 to 5 in and like doing my quota and like getting my, you know what I mean? Like
Mhm, mhm.
um and a lot of that I will say at the beginning of my career, I didn't love animation.
Huh.
I was still struggling with it. I like didn't quite know if I was good at it. It was hard for me to be free with it. And so I discovered a lot of my passion for animation like through doing the job a bit more. And oh yes, hello, darling. Um, and I've been really lucky to work on projects that have allowed me to grow and have allowed me to have like an artistic voice. Like I've been spoiled, I've been spoiled, right?
Mhm, mhm,
Um, and so it's one of those things where it was kind of a double-edged sword where it's like, yes, I love it and I see my passion, I see other people's passion and I want to work it. Okay, my gosh, girl, please don't lick my hair. Um, but like I'm seeing everybody like working and doing so good. And so for me, it was almost like, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, where
mhm,
it's like I saw my love for it um basically put me down a path where I had no boundaries with my job and
mhm,
myself,
mhm,
and that led me to not being able to do my job. So I had to reconsider and rethink after that, like, how am I going to function, right? Because
mhm,
it's
mhm.
but that's a danger all of us can kind of get into. I'll sort of um this is a like an anecdote, but I had a student ask me, like, if you were to work on a show that you really love, like the best show ever, like, what would it be if you had like that dream show? And I went, I don't want to work on something that I love that much,
Mhm, mhm,
because I had been through that. And like, I knew for myself, I can't be that person because
mhm.
I have no off switch.
Okay.
So but I had to learn that for myself, right? Like that's a me thing. That's not like an other people thing. But like it really goes to show that, we're all susceptible to putting like taking care of ourselves on the side for sometimes the unspoken culture of animation sometimes, right? The
Mhm,
the
mhm,
want to do really well. Yeah.
mhm. And so you felt in that particular instance, you felt like it was more of an internal thing that you were, again, like you said, like putting pressure on yourself because of the expectations of you wanting to perform for the show. Was there like a moment where a switch flipped and you said, I can't do this anymore? Or was there like a trigger that helped you go out of that kind of spiral?
Yeah, so I would say like for me it there wasn't really a switch. It was sort of like I didn't realize how much I was working and how much I was burning out.
Mm,
And then I just kind of crashed. So I had to recover a little bit
mhm,
before I could sort of like think about things. But I think for me, um, one thing that really helped was to connect with community. So I had, asked my bosses like, hey, like I'm burnt out, like, can I work part-time? They're super supportive. They're like, yep. And I ran a training group. Because I was like, I just want to train, I just want to train people. And kind of through that, I sort of through talking to students and through starting a community group, like the long story short of it is I realized that I could have this passion for animation and what I do, but to put more energy into the community and less energy into the job. And that
mm,
helped me build some boundaries for myself, but still allowed me to take this energy that I had and this want to like kind of push
mhm,
and put it into something else that was going to pay me back a little bit, because as much as I love my job, it's a job, it's a relationship, and it's one that should have specific boundaries. It shouldn't be my everything, and I was making it my everything.
mm. Do you feel like, uh, having taken more time of the and putting it into the community and having something that was other than your job that you could put energy to, do you feel like it also helped you in your job?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I
Mm,
actually think like I've always been someone who likes the teamwork aspect of
mhm.
it. So like I mean I was an animation supervisor. I liked leading a team. When I got to direct on Hilda, like that was great because my team was bigger. Uh,
Mhm,
but like, so I've always sort of been like keen on getting to know people, because for me, it's like when you get to know people and you get to know their strengths, I don't know, there's so much you can do with people's skills, right? And
mhm,
we can talk and have conversations. But I think it is something that in animation, and I can only talk like from the Canadian side of things, because we're in the same industry, but there are differences. And I will say, a lot of people in Canada specifically often feel like because they're in the service industry, so they're doing like um the outsourced jobs.
mhm, mhm,
And a lot of studios can sometimes feel like, you can't be creative. It's like just pump it out, just do the thing or whatever, like put your head down, get your frames done, all that kind of thing.
mhm,
I've been very spoiled, but that's a very relatable story for a lot of people.
mhm,
um and I think you can do that because it is sort of like the environment of like the go go go, but you can also do it if you're just like a highly creative person and you're not really interested in people and you just kind of want like get like do your creative thing. Both of those things can separate us from people, but this is like a team sport, right?
mhm,
Like
mhm,
like a real team sport where it's you can't sequester yourself. If you sequester yourself and you don't talk with people and you don't communicate with people and you don't like understand that you have support, it's going to make your mental health much harder,
mhm,
because part of keeping, yourself above water is having a support system. And this is a job where there are a lot of pressures, and I find that what if sort of like just from getting to know people and just being involved, and I'm sure you can kind of relate, but animation is an industry that attracts a lot of people who are looking for community, because there's such a sincerity in the storytelling, right? Like this is why we get an animation, because we saw something and it resonated with us and we went like, we want that, like we want to be a part of that feeling, we want to give someone that feeling. And a lot of people come into animation and they find their community, they find other like neurodivergent people or queer people, or like there's like the diversity is real because the storytelling do bring us together, right? Like
mhm, mhm,
um but what I find is that even though there's a lot of extroverts, there's a lot of very people who haven't had community before, haven't had as strong community, and they are very easy to be pressured
mhm,
and more susceptible to pressure. And
mhm,
it's not it's I've noticed the change sort of over the years, not even in a bad way, right? But in a like, as the animation industry has grown, and especially in North America, like we've gotten a lot more stories, right? Like when I went into animation, it's not like I had like Steven Universe did not inspire me because that was after, right? Like Avatar
Right.
had
Right.
just come out when I was in college. Avatar
Mhm.
was like I was watching it in college, right?
Mhm.
So that has brought so many people into animation that it's not just like a kid like hotshot thing. Like people are coming in here sincere with their heart on their sleeves, and sometimes we end up putting that the stuff on a pedestal
Mhm.
because of that sincerity, and
Mhm.
it makes people very susceptible to being taken advantage of,
Mhm.
not even on purpose, not even like someone like going out of their way twirling their mustache trying to take advantage of you, but just the pressure of the industry that the environment creates,
Mhm.
like I said, can lead us down this path that even though we love it, it's like we have to protect ourselves and learn how to put boundaries up,
Mhm.
because we shouldn't, we can love animation. I love animation. I love the animation community.
Mhm.
I don't want to love my job. I want to be satisfied with my job.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
You know, I want to
Yeah.
have a good relationship with my job. I don't want to, I think we're getting a little weird with the love, right? Where I'm going,
Okay.
maybe not, you know, and like in a sense I do, like I mean, I've worked at the same place for like a long time and I have a lot of my close friends are there.
Mhm.
But I think that is something that we need to separate as like artists in this industry, that there's a difference between the art and the job and the community. And
Mhm.
oftentimes we put the job highest.
Interesting. Do you do you feel like so I don't I just talking personally
Yeah.
for a little bit. There have been jobs that I have been very, very passionate about and have put in ghost overtime hours where if people don't know what that is, that's basically like that's overtime that you're doing, but not reporting on your time card and not really telling anybody, just kind of sneaking in on the weekends and whatnot. Um, and, so there have been parts in my career where I've put in like a 12-hour day working. And after an extended period of time of that, I started noticing that the extra work that I was doing after about the 10th hour, I would have to redo anyways because it just wasn't good, and putting in that extra time was uh, not helping the quality of the work, but was just feeding into this feeling that, "Oh, I gotta put more time into it. Oh, I gotta
Yeah,
put more
yeah.
time into it," and wasn't actually being, uh, effective or wasn't doing great work. Have you experienced that kind of thing too?
Oh,
Like, when
yeah,
when
yeah.
you're burning out?
Absolutely. Yeah. Like I actually like because even after like I had overworked myself and I was like, I'm never gonna do this again. Did I do it again? Oh yeah, not to
Mhm,
that same extent, but it's like we're all, I always think of it like a whirlpool. We're always sucking back in. It is like you have to practice not getting sucked in.
mhm,
Um, but yeah, like I've done that too, where it's sort of like I've been working so much and I have learned to not do that way more because I make bad mistakes when I overwork.
mm,
Like I make
mhm,
really dumb mistakes, like I mix up numbers. And if I'm in a leadership position,
mm,
I can't make mistakes. Like one thing that does help me is seeing it as a, for me, if I get to decide what my best is, right?
mm,
My
mhm,
best is an 8-hour day, leaving on time, taking my breaks, and taking care of myself so I can come back and do another great 8-hour day,
mhm,
right? And the thing is that when we do the ghost overtime, like, and I've done it too, like, don't get me wrong, like, no one, we've all done it. And this is why it's such a good conversation and why it is part of the culture, because even though we know it's not great, we still do it.
mhm,
And I'm not gonna, get on anyone's case for like wanting to put extra in because we don't have a lot of chances to be as creative as we want in this industry. It's hard to turn up that opportunity to kind of like go a little ham on something and like make it portfolio worthy, right?
Mhm.
So, and I don't think it's an all or nothing thing, because I do think there's always room for flexibility. But I think overall, if we don't, like, if we add up the ghost overtime that everybody has done, not because they wanted to, but because they were responding to fear or pressure,
Mhm.
that's a lot of hours. That's a lot of
Interesting.
hours that has now gone into like the scope creep of the overall industry.
Mhm.
And I do tell people, it's like, if you're doing it out of fear or obligation, don't do it. And I also think we should question like why we feel like it's okay to do.
Mm.
Because it's like, is this, are you doing this because like you're really weighing the pros and cons, or are you doing this because it feels uncomfortable if you don't do it?
Ah.
Right? Like
Uh-huh.
overworking is also an anxiety response. It's, I mean, for me it was like, I'm
Absolutely
keeping
here, yeah.
control. I'm keeping
Mhm.
control over this thing. And if I don't have control over this thing, then like I then what can I do, right? So what, we have to be aware that sometimes this is our response, because
Mhm.
I have friends that like feel uncomfortable when they're taking vacation, or feel uncomfortable when they're taking a sick day. And so what I'm realizing is like, it is so ingrained in us, the
Mhm.
culture of overworking, that we feel uncomfortable taking time. We feel uncomfortable doing what is on paper, doing the bare, like not even the bare minimum, because we wouldn't be in this industry if we didn't love it. Everyone's always giving maximum of what
Mhm.
they can, their capacity for that day. I That's a given. To me, that's always a given.
Mhm.
But like, even if you just did what was on paper, it's already going to be a fantastic job. Like, we do have to learn to work within our boundaries, because I also think like, and I'm going to say this from like a, again, like a personal sort of like leadership sort of thing. So I'm it is uncomfortable sometimes, like when you're in a leadership position, to kind of like, you know, take responsibility and stuff like that. There's more things that are in your control, there's more things on your shoulders.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of people in the industry can relate to maybe having showrunners or people in charge who ask for too much, push for too much, or whatever. I was in that position too, where it's like, here I am with the team, and I have to be okay with maybe an episode not turning out as good as other people's episodes,
Mhm.
right? Like,
Mhm.
as someone who's, growing up in the industry, that's an uncomfortable feeling, to, do something and have it be put next to other people's stuff, or be new to something. It's uncomfortable. So how do I respond to that anxiety feeling of being uncomfortable?
Mhm.
Well, I can, sometimes people will be reactive and push their team. And what I've learned from when I was really bad, or when I was kind of in in the bad times,
Mhm.
when I am stressed out, when I don't take care of my mental health, my team can't talk to me, because I look miserable and they don't want to stress
Uh-huh.
me out.
Uh-huh.
So
So every time
it's,
they talk to you, it feels like to them that they're putting a monkey on your shoulders, and then suddenly,
yes.
yeah, okay.
Yeah. And there was
Mhm.
like, and I want my team to feel like they can tell me anything. I want to
Mhm.
be there to support them, right?
Mhm.
So if anything, for me as a leader, even more so, you should be taking care of yourself, and you should be adhering to boundaries, because you are the example for your team.
Mhm.
Because
Mhm.
I can't tell my team to go home and take care of their mental health if they go home and they see me still working.
Mm, mhm.
Like, I
Mhm.
kind of have to practice what I preach, which is
Mhm.
good. That's good, right? But
Mhm.
that's why I'm so vocal about it, because like, I also, it's for myself. It's for myself.
Mhm. So it seems like that's also for you, a trigger for looking out for cultivating a culture where ghost overtime is a thing that everybody does. And it seems like because every show has its own culture,
Yeah.
every show has its own like way of doing things,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
some are like very militant 9 to 5, some are ghost overtime, some are all over the place.
Yes. Yeah.
But so you're saying kind of as a leader, you have to be looking out for those trigger signs that you've experienced yourself too, of a culture where overwork is part of the norm.
Yeah, and like for me, it's again, it's sort of like a logic thing where like I've I've been told sort of in the past over the years because I've
Mhm.
always been very like, team oriented. It's like, oh, you hold people's hands or you're too soft. And I'm just going like, it's just logic. Like for me, it's just logic. I need that. So if
Mm,
I want the best work from my team, I want them like that means I want them to adhere to boundaries as well, right? And that comes down to like
mhm,
clear expectations. So it's like telling my team, listen, it is not an expectation that, you hit quota every week without fail. But it is an
mm,
expectation that if you don't hit quota, you need to let me know or let your supervisor know in advance
mhm,
so they can help
mhm,
stuff like that. Like that's the sort of thing where it's like you want to give people room to be able to have room to take care of their mental health. You need to
mhm,
be able to prepare that like people are going to have bad days. Like not everyone's going to be 110% like every day.
mhm,
Someone's best is going to be 1 week or like a few weeks maybe not doing quota or having like a hard time in life. And if
mhm.
you show your team that room, like they will give you their best work when they're on, right? Like so for me it's just logically the path to like the best product you can get, like kind of like what you said, it's like I can make you money, like I can do the thing. you know
Right, right.
but I do think like as I've sort of like and again I'm thinking about the culture of the industry, and I do push on leaders a lot and people in leadership positions because like I said, the people coming into this industry are primed to be crushed.
Mhm,
And it's up to us who have a bit more of a say and a bit more experience and a bit more of a voice to be the leaders that we wish, we had had, or like things that, you know, man, I talked with my director more. I wish I had known that person.
mhm.
And there's also this, I mean, I won't get on the rant, but it's like there's not a lot of training in management positions and like showrunner and leadership positions
Oh,
and,
there's none. There's almost
yeah,
none.
yeah,
There's no
exactly.
formal training whatsoever. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's
some
whack.
places have like leadership programs, but it's
Yeah.
you get that like 6 months after getting the job.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think one thing that is uncomfortable sometimes to admit when you're in a higher up or a leadership position is that
Mhm,
your choices affect people. My
mm,
choices as a supervisor, an animation supervisor, an animation director affect my team. They
mhm,
do. They just
mhm,
do. I take responsibility for that, right? Like to the best I can.
mhm,
But like that is the reality. And that means I'm gonna make mistakes and that I'm gonna upset some people and vice versa, whatever. This is being human. Um,
mhm,
but I do think that like that is something that if we understand that, and like I said, be more of a team, this is something that kind of is going to take all of us if we want to have a healthier industry culture. Um, and I do think there's more people that are like really do understand mental health, but I think the one thing we have to push against in order to get more room for it, where we can actually like be healthy, is push back against the overworking culture. And that means it's going to feel like uncomfortable. Like because like I kind of say, like, I don't know if it was meant to fail, let it fail. And that's a scary thing
mhm,
to say, but it's like, I don't know, like, what would happen if we didn't do ghost overtime? Like, what's the worst that could happen? Something would
mhm,
still look good.
mhm, mhm.
It would still look good. Like we're all fantastically talented, right? Like just it'd be fine, but it is uncomfortable. It is like you come into this industry already with it ingrained in you
Mhm,
because you want to do well.
mhm. How what do you
Excuse me.
how do you recognize the signs of burnout in yourself and in your team? What does that feel like?
um, I think for me, one of the things that helped was having the community and having friends. Like I said, like I had friends telling me I was getting bad.
Mhm, okay, it's mostly okay.
Yeah. So, like, do you trust the people around you? Because for me, when I got into it, like, I'm just on my grind, right? Like, I don't see myself wearing down day after day after day.
Mhm,
So, trust the people around you when they, you know, give you like, "Are you okay? You should get some rest." Like, listen to them. Maybe take a step back and think.
mhm,
excuse me, um, don't isolate yourself. That is like the number one thing when people start to overwork. It's like they put their head down, they're like, I'm just gonna focus, and they just cut things out. Do
Mhm.
not isolate yourself. That is like you don't want to be stuck in your own head. Um, so those two things, and basically what I would recommend to people, and kind of what I would say, because like you're you, right? Like I can recognize the signs of myself now, but I had to crash a few times before I started to recognize them. So the
Mhm.
first time it wasn't great, and I didn't realize how bad I was burning out. The second time, when I started to overwork, I noticed that my work was getting worse. I was getting more revisions. I noticed I was getting more negative overall.
This is the
Um,
person?
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Oh
uh,
gosh, I can run so negative sometimes, but like it makes
uh-huh.
a difference to have people around you that aren't, because we our environments can affect us a lot, right?
Mhm.
So we have to
Mhm.
be aware that even though you can have as much mental fortitude and go like, no, I'm going to take care of myself, all this, if you're in an environment that is giving you pressure all the time, you're going to respond to that pressure.
Mhm.
um so I would say, like, through life as you go up and down, because there is no like miracle cure. There's not like a checklist of things you can do and you have good mental health, right? Like
Mhm.
you are going to respond to pressure in your career. You are going to have like down times. What you need to recognize is that this is not a failure. This is not a sign that you're not cut out for this. This is
Mhm.
not a sign you should give up. Um, this is just a sign that you need to listen to yourself a little bit more and maybe get to know yourself more. And through that, you can kind of start to cultivate like a better work life balance or relationship or in work boundaries, because you know how much you can take on. Not everyone can take on the same amount. And it's ridiculous of us to think that we can.
Mhm.
We very much see success in animation, try to like paint ourselves with the same broad stroke. Well, success is like getting a show, and success is like getting your name out there, and it's like those are great goals, but success is more than that. Like your
Mhm.
happiness is more than that. And as you go through life, what you want in your 20s is going to change in your 30s, which is going to change in your 40s. So the mental health thing is just like any sort of life thing. It's going to go up and down, but
Mhm.
you learn more about yourself about the way, so that when it does hit, you can catch yourself earlier and earlier. And now I'm at the point where I'm like pretty good.
Mhm.
Like it's actually wild how less anxious I am now compared to like 10 years ago. So
Mhm.
it's a long journey, but it's worth it.
Um, yeah, and I think that's part of why you're a strong leader too. I think being able to recognize that stuff and recognize that in yourself, and I wouldn't say solving that in yourself, but like constantly monitoring that in yourself means you can set a better framework for the rest of the team too.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
like that's I remember at first, like when my therapist told me like, or I was like coming to this notion that I was always going to have anxiety.
Mhm.
And like that's such a bummer, right? Because I was like, what do you mean? um but like it's a part of me. It's a response to stimuli. It's just a
Mhm.
nerve response. It's part of who I am, like, as I was growing up. This stuff can be normalized. What we need to do is like not use it as a um like again, you're not cut out for it or something like that. Like this is just a
Mhm.
normal human experience, but that does mean that you still have to be careful about it. Like instead of ignoring it, let's just call a spade and say this is going to be a high pressure industry. And if you
Mhm.
want to have the longevity, community, boundaries, which
Mhm.
honestly is like, it's not a it's still a vague checkbox, but you can have community however you want. This is a community right here, right?
Mhm.
Like, great. Even just like watching stuff on Twitch or streaming or going to meetups. These are the things that will allow us to like
Get
still
some outside
story tell.
context. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I watch a lot of cult documentaries, and the first thing that cult leaders do is cut the members off from uh, opinions of people that are outside of the cult too, and
yeah,
isolate
yeah,
them,
yeah.
and that gets you into that spiral thinking. But once you've like identified that that feeling and that spiral thinking and like understand that, oh no, I might go down this road of burnout again. I might go down this road of overwork again. But you still feel the pressure from the culture. How do you set those boundaries against it? Because if there's a culture that's always kind of pushing against you, you know, and like a rough culture like that wants to break down those boundaries. How do you establish and maintain those boundaries?
Um, well, it's practice, I guess.
I
I
mean,
mean, like,
yeah, I guess this is the 50-year career question. Like, how do
yeah,
we all
yeah,
do this?
exactly.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I'm still going. Like, I think that comes overall, it comes with time. Like, it is
Mm,
something that I think the first step is just awareness that you need boundaries, and that
mm,
the I boundaries are easier to set up when you learn what messages aren't true. And some of the messages that we've gotten, like, maybe we don't have to function that way, because a lot of messages that I've gotten and I've heard other people get is like, if you want to succeed in this industry, you have to eat and breathe the animation. Like, you got, it's got to be your everything, right?
mhm,
And if we're kind of sold this idea or given this idea that like success in animation, it looks like, a feature job, or looks like this fancy studio or this fancy whatever, and you have to like dedicate your life to it, like that's the only way to make it, whatever. But then of course it's like, well, take care of yourself, work life balance. Like, that's not, those are two different messages, right?
mm, mhm, mhm,
Like, is this a lifestyle or is this a career, right? And I think, it's unpacking some of these messages that we've gotten unintentionally or intentionally. There's a lot of unintentional stuff. It's just in the
mhm,
air, right?
mhm, mhm,
In the atmosphere, right? But like that, you don't need to, like, is the job tough? Sure. I'm not saying it's not. Is
mhm,
it competitive? Also not saying it's not competitive. But can you find success without like missing your kids' birthdays and like giving up every weekend? And should we be expecting that of people in order to succeed? Or should we be building an industry that doesn't require that? Like, these are the things that, if we want healthy boundaries with work, we do need to understand that, like, the culture will push back. I think it's one of those things where I don't really know what to do besides just be stubborn about it,
mhm,
because that is the push, right? It won't go away until we start getting like more changes in the industry, basically.
mhm,
Because it does benefit the studios for everybody to do ghost overtime. I'm sure all of our quotas are based after like so many people doing, like, fantastic artists doing work behind the scenes that they haven't reported, and
mhm,
and then even more people doing work behind the scenes that, they're not doing it because they love it, they're doing it because they feel pressured to do it, which
mhm,
is like a whole other thing, right? Like,
mhm, mhm,
that's the thing where it's skewed, it's all skewed. So we need to understand that the culture already, we have to kind of like be wary of it, even to start.
mhm,
And when I say culture, I'm talking like the culture has skewed more towards jobs than
mhm,
community and artistry. And if
mhm,
we just go, you want to know something? I want our community to be less about propping up like studio jobs and more about propping up like all this other stuff, which I
mhm,
honestly think it has been doing.
mhm,
The more we do that, the better it'll get.
mhm. So basically, just take down capitalism as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
basically, yeah. I mean, that's always the goal. Everything leads down to like taking down capitalism.
Um. So it also sounds like, because I actually had a question. Do you have any tips on setting boundaries to protect yourself and self worth from your
Mm,
value in a creative job? And I think, I mean, I'm gonna throw this out there because as a guess for an answer, but uh, it feels like the real answer is redefining success and self worth for yourself, and that it doesn't have to be uh success doesn't have to look like killing yourself for a job for 12 hours a day, just to reach the next level.
Yeah.
Success for yourself can be working 8
Yeah.
hours plus a lunch break and then going home and petting your dog and hanging out with your significant other for 2 hours and,
Yep.
you know, going to the dog park or so, you know?
Like, it's going to be different for everyone, but I do think that we should be questioning some of our goals, because I was working 60-hour weeks and I was telling myself the entire time that I was choosing to do it.
Mhm.
And I think that for me was like a big eye opener of like, wow, I really got myself into this. And I know a lot of people like don't get themselves into it. They have way more external pressure than like I did. Didn't have
Mhm.
the support I did. But I
Mhm.
mean, doesn't that just go to show like just how much we're all all in it, right?
Uh-huh, yeah.
So
And
yeah,
were you
we
happy working those 60-hour weeks?
no,
Okay. All right.
no. I
Okay.
mean, like,
Yeah.
do I look at the stuff we did and am I proud of it? Yeah, but I think I could have felt that way without that.
Mm,
Right?
mhm.
It's like the
Mhm.
way I see it, it's like Schrodinger's animation show. Like how how do we know that the overwork made it what it is? Have we done
Mm.
something without the overwork? Have we done something without the ghost overtime? Have we done something adhering to the boundaries every step of the way? I don't know. That's an experiment. Show me what that looks like.
Gotcha. Yeah, let's A/B test this. Let's A/B test
Yeah, yeah,
this
exactly.
with
Let's
an
just like,
unhealthy work environment and a healthy work environment, just
yeah,
as an experiment. Let's try it out. Let's
yeah.
try 40-hour
See what
weeks and see
happens.
how it goes. Yeah.
Yeah. So and also like in the industry where there is a lot of lack of boundaries and expectations,
Mhm.
if your job's not giving you those, you give them to yourself. This is how I choose to give them to myself.
Mm.
This is how I do my best job.
Mhm.
Is taking so it, and I mean I say this very like plainly and it seems easy, but like I said, I've had, a lot of therapy to help me out with this. I
Mhm.
didn't start off this way. It's all practice at the end of the day.
Mhm.
And but being aware of it is just the first step.
Mm.
And then it's, finding other sources of self-worth. We do work hard at this job. We do love the art. Obviously you do have to dedicate a lot of time to learning, but there's a
Mhm.
difference between like sacrificing maybe some video game time or like, fun time or whatever, and like working all weekend with no fun time at all. Right?
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
there's a difference between like, you want to know something, I'm really like gonna go for this storyboard and I have a deadline and I think, if I just kind of like I'm gonna get it done.
Mhm.
Sure. But like there's a difference between that once in a while and doing it all the time, because
Mhm.
you will not
Mhm.
be able to turn it off. Anything can
Mhm.
be an excuse. Anything can be an
Mhm.
excuse to overwork.
And there have been instances where I've been, and I'm kind of just injecting my personal view, and I hope you don't mind.
Oh,
Um, but there have been instances where I have like put in ghost overtime on the weekend because I wanted to, just because I had a good idea and I wanted to get it out quickly and I was super passionate about it and like I was I was legitimately happy to put in that time because I was like, "Oh, fuck yeah. Okay, my pitch is on Monday. It's Friday. I finished my board, but shit, I was swimming and I had a really good idea for this gag and I'm just going to whip it out in like 2 to 3 hours because I want to get that laugh. And
yeah,
there've
yeah.
been moments when like I've been and that's more like in creative roles maybe than more service roles, but there has been times where I've been like excited to do it and I've been happy to do that. And that feels good as opposed to the time where it's, oh shit, I feel like I fucked up and oh, I really got to do this because otherwise I'm gonna
Yeah.
be bad, etc. So like
Yes.
I think I think there are ways to like be passionate about it
Absolutely. Yeah.
and be okay with that, but in the ways that make you happy as opposed to the ways that just fill a hole in
Yeah.
the fear.
And that's where I always like that's where the you comes in. Like I can't tell
Mm.
you if you're doing something out of like an anxiety or if you're just pumped, right?
Mhm.
Like I
Mhm.
can't tell. That's a you choice. And
Mhm.
you're going to make that choice and sometimes it's going to work and sometimes it's not. But like, just be aware of yourself and yeah, that's kind of it, cuz like yeah, I've gone like I love me the musical singing scenes. Give
Mhm.
me a singing scene, like a dramatic singing scene with like Rapunzel hair that's all flowing. I love animating hair. Like
Mhm.
like I will pick at that thing forever because I will just have fun. Like there's so many great moments that like you can lean into. But I do think as artists we have to be aware that like some we don't want our passion to lead to unintentional scope creep.
Mm,
Because like being in the industry for like 15 years at this point, like it's real. Oh my
mhm,
gosh. Like
mhm,
people starting now, I'm going like this isn't even a technology thing. This is like a combination of jobs thing. And it's we are a community, we're a big team. Of course, sometimes our passion unintentionally leads to these things,
mm,
right? It's
mhm,
and that's not to like shame anybody who goes ham, but it's just for us to be aware. That's all. That's all.
mhm,
And to practice going, maybe this time I won't, or I'm only going to do it not as an expectation, but as a only for myself.
mhm,
You know,
mhm.
that's
For
it.
my
And
own
that,
satisfaction, not
yeah,
for yeah, not
yeah,
to
I,
fill this kind of hole. Yeah.
and that's exactly it. It's like how your boundaries look like with your job is up to you. It could be being very strict on when you go home, and maybe that is good for you. And maybe you're
Mhm,
someone who's like, you want to know something? I don't mind doing like a little bit here and there. But I'm never going to do like weekend work, right?
mhm,
Start with
mhm,
where you feel like you can push back a little bit. And then maybe in a year from then you learn a little more, right? But you want to get away from this like habit of uh always doing the extra because the expectations are out of the water at this point. Like I've seen the best shows I've ever seen, like ever.
mhm,
Like the stuff that's being like made is wild.
mhm,
And yet it feels like, despite all this, everyone
mhm,
still is stressed, everyone's working more, and everyone's making
mhm,
less money. So it's like,
mhm,
at one point we do have to go, maybe we should keep some for ourselves a little more.
mhm. And I don't know about anybody else, but like I feel like you hear a lot of the stories of creative hits uh when you hear the stories of the people of people that work on like wildly creative hits, you hear a lot of stories of like, oh yeah, we worked a long time and we worked overnights and we did and it was 2 in the morning and we came up with this idea and we did it, because those are the interesting headline grabbing stories.
Yep.
But there are just as many stories out there about like the Modern Family writers room, which in at 9, out at 6, and that show won a shit ton of Emmys. I think there are animated shows that have been running for years and years and years that have won tons of Emmys, and you talk to people on those shows, and very often they say like, "Yeah, uh, yeah, I go home on time and we
Mhm.
do great work, and nobody really burns out. It's running relatively well at this point." So I do feel like, I don't know, I always feel like it's part of my mission as a supervisor to combat the idea that wildly creative shows or best shows that are out there have to be done with this with a crazy schedule, or with crazy
Yeah.
overtime.
And I think a lot of that just comes down to like the cycle in animation where yeah, there's not a lot of training and there's not a lot of expectations and it kind of leads people to act like do the best they can. I
Mhm.
think people do the best they can, even if I don't get along with someone, I usually assume that like they're coming from the same place I am, which is they're passionate about the industry and want to do the best job they can.
Mhm.
Right? So it's like
Mhm.
you're always going to be working with a lot of different people, but yeah, we're all on the same team and I definitely think that with the amount of talent, like straight up like there's so much talent. And I think if we just had some expectations and management training, it would do so much. Like it's wild how much basic stuff like will
Mhm.
make a world of difference.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
that's a whole other discussion. That's me getting on a whole other high horse.
Uh, any other advice just on keeping yourself healthy in general? I mean, besides, see a therapist, which I highly recommend as well, and,
Yeah.
get tested for any sort of brain chemical
Yeah, yeah. Well, like
things.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of it comes down to self-worth, as
Mhm,
artists, like we're putting our heart into what we're doing.
mhm,
And I think one thing that is really good to remember is that in order to have passion for this job, like you need to live, right?
mm,
Like
mm,
we don't
mhm,
come with like a well of inspiration that's like never going to run dry. It will run
mm,
dry. What
mhm,
fills that up is you living and watching things and reading stories, and
mhm,
like that's where stories come from. Stories come from us. Like we're out there living life, we're experiencing things. If all we did was put our head down, do the job,
mhm,
how are we going to be creative and inspired, right? So I
mhm,
think, which is a very simplistic thing, like how is your mental health, live life, but also sometimes it feels like the world is on fire. But
mhm,
um find positive people, find a support system, um find a community. Community is so important, um because they're going to be the people that let you know when you're getting to be a little much, right?
mhm,
And I need to
mhm,
trust other people more than I trust myself. My brain is very biased and it will tell me to keep going. So I
mhm,
recognize that I need to trust other people more. um and for me, it's that's kind of what it is, because um yeah, well, through I talk about community a lot because that's where I get more of my self-confidence from. It's
mhm,
it's my thing. I like to do it. Your thing doesn't have to be community. Like, when I say find community, I mean find a community in something. It doesn't even have to be
mhm,
animation, right?
mhm,
It can be
mhm,
anything you love, anything that inspires you. Make music, like do
mhm,
crafts, like go on hiking trips, and make that time for yourself, because you will
mhm,
need it. And you don't need to pay your dues. And I say that for everybody who's like fresh to the industry and like they want to get in or they want this. There is no, you need to get rid of the idea of paying your dues. If you are in the industry, if you have the job, if I'm a director of a show and you get hired and you're on my team, you
mhm,
don't need to pay your dues. You have the job just as much as I do, right? We're on the same team.
mhm,
We're both here.
mhm,
You have just as much of a right to be here. And what you need to do is, now, as a professional, take care of yourself, because I expect you, if you're on my team, like, yes, there's a job you need to do or whatever, but you're an independent artist with a career. You are going
mm,
to last longer than this production you're on. I
mhm,
hope.
mhm.
That's the goal.
Mhm.
Right? Like, if not, then I'm so sorry. Like, what is going on? But like, that's the kind of, it's hard to get that confidence, because there is this kind of culture, and sort of like I say, we put people on pedestals, we put the job on pedestals. Oh, like what if you were on a team with a creator you really like? Does that mean you can't admire them? No, admire them, but don't put
Mhm,
them up on a pedestal. This is a job, and if you want to be professional in this career and like make it, you will like try to see the job as a job and see the art as the art, and start to build those little walls of boundaries, right? Doesn't have to be high, but you need to start right away, right?
mhm,
One
mhm.
little brick at a time. And
Well, this has been
sometimes sometimes that little brick is just going, I feel like I should stay late, but I won't, and going home.
mhm.
Great, perfect.
Just recognizing that and doing it, just
Yeah,
forcing yourself to go home.
yeah,
Yep. Well, Megan, thank you so much for your time. This has been wonderful. Thank you so much. Yeah, everybody, let's take down capitalism and
yeah,
unionize everywhere.
yeah. Absolutely. Thank you everybody for coming and listening to me ramble about this stuff. Take care of yourselves.
Yeah, thank you. Just last wrap up things. This will be recorded. This will be on Twitch, and also it's being recorded and it'll be up in the SFA YouTube coming up soon. We're going to do more of these. I think in about a month, we're going to do a roundtable, very nuts and bolts about how clean should your storyboards be? Because that is a huge question, and and that's also a stress-inducing question, which I know also goes to mental health as well. Panicking about your drawings being too rough or too clean or not sure about show expectations. So we'll do a huge roundtable about what each show expects, how clean is too clean, what's actually useful, et cetera, et cetera. And then we're gonna do a couple more coming up. We'll do some stuff on shorthand. We're talking to somebody about developing and pitching a show. And we'll see when that one gets scheduled. It's coming up. Yeah. So thank you, Megan, for your time. Thank you everybody for coming. And have a great dog park walk or dinner or whatever you're doing to recharge, if it's Elden Ring or if it's a less stressful video game than Elden Ring. Uh like maybe
Fields
Animal
of
Crossing.
Mistra. Fields of Mistra. 100% recommend.
Oh, yes. Yes, yes, yes. Very, very good one. Yes.
Very good.
Thank you everybody. See
Bye,
ya.
everyone.
Have a good night. Bye.